Hello everyone, I am Stephanie, an artist living in Vannes, France, and in today's video I'm going to try and test out acryl gouache. Now, more specifically, I'm going to try Turner Acryl Gouache and not the Acrylic from Holbein, and that is very simply because Holbein, for some reason, makes it impossible to know which pigments they use, at least online. I have not been able to find any information on the pigments they use on their acrylic gouache. So I decided to try out Turner. Turner is also half the price, so I thought it would be a good starting point, especially since before doing this video I was kind of convinced that acryl gouache was more or less acrylic paint, only matte, yeah, I was wrong. I actually really like that paint, but more on that later. Now, I have decided to compare it to acrylic paint in the beginning, and then I decided to compare it to gouache as well, because it's really an in-between medium between those two. I decided to try out the Ultramarine pigment, so PB29. So this is normally considered to be a transparent pigment, and so I decided to use Schminke as the acryl comparison. So the Schminke Primacryl, which is artist grade from Royal Talens Amsterdam, the standard series, which is more student grade, but is, I would say it's between student and artist grade. I use it in my own work. It's just less pigmented and more plasticky from the feeling, but for my sculpture usually it works well. And so I decided to test them out, you know, and I was really surprised because the Turner Acryl Gouache is very opaque, but at the same time it kind of behaves slightly like watercolor. It's such an interesting medium. Until now I was kind of thinking that it was more a marketing gimmick than anything else, that it would not be that much more interesting than acrylic or gouache, but it's quite different, and yeah, I was really impressed. What I did was basically just a few washes of blue, and then I let it dry, and then I added the white on top of it to see how opaque it was. Now, I used titanium white as a white, which is the most opaque white ever. So all whites are pretty opaque. Now I'm not sure it's a mistake, but when I ordered the Turner gouache, they didn't have the regular white. Basically, they have two ranges of colors, one that is regular and then one that is Japanesque. And the Japanesque ones are slightly textured. When I ordered them, they did not have white and regular, so I took the white from Japanesque, but the texture is actually quite rough. So I think you have to dilute it a little bit more with water for it to work better. But yeah, overall I was really impressed by the quality and the pigments. It's what I'm most surprised with is that the pigments are really vibrant. I know in gouache you have to use some kind of opacifier to make it, well, opaque and then matte as well. But yeah, that acryl gouache is really pigmented and vibrant. And then of course I wanted to compare it to regular gouache, and so I used the ones I have. So again, Schminke, the Horadam one, so the higher quality one. They have a designer range as well, but it's just less pigmented from my understanding. And then the Winsor Newton designer gouache, so again PB29. And now with regular gouache, I don't know if you've ever used regular gouache, but it never really dries, so it always lifts up. So even if it's nice and matte and opaque and whatnot, the moment you put white or any other color on top of it, it will lift slightly the color underneath. And this is something that I've always found a bit frustrating with gouache. And I tend to keep my gouache really as a last layer and just one, but sometimes you get frustrated by that. And this is also a reason why I wanted to try that acryl gouache, because I thought if it has the same specificities of gouache like regular gouache but is acrylic, so it stays in waterproof and it stays in place and you can layer it, then yeah, and it's exactly that. So it's not a marketing gimmick, it really is like gouache, looking like that, but at the same time waterproof in the end. And yeah, really vibrant colors. So I'm very happy I finally decided to try it. I was afraid, honestly, when I bought it, I was almost regretting it as soon as I bought it, because I thought it probably is just going to be another acrylic paint, but I was really wrong. It's great. It's great, and I'm going to start using it in my sculptural and pictorial work as, again, as a last layer, I think, more than full grade on. Although from what I see and what I tried later on in this video, at the end I'm trying all the colors that I got. You can really use it almost like watercolor, so it makes really nice washes. Now the paper that I used here, it's Fabriano paper, and it's 50% cotton and it's hot pressed, and I must admit I don't really like that paper much, but for swatches it's okay. So I will have to try on the papers I usually use, but it seems to work really well in washes, which is not always the case with acrylics. However, I must say that when trying these out, I tried the Schminke Primacryl first, and that one really did well in washes, which was to be expected since PB29 is very transparent, and usually artist grade have a lot of pigments compared to the acrylic binder, but compared to the more student quality, or like in between student and artist grade quality from Royal Talens, that one didn't spread or didn't do a nice wash. It was difficult actually to make a wash out of it. And so of course I did a few swatches from the colors I took. Now I never go too crazy. I never buy sets. I think I mentioned that before on my channel. I don't buy sets because usually in sets you always have colors that are absolutely not light fast, or colors that you don't use or don't want, or doubles, you know, colors that you can so easily mix that it makes no sense to have them in a tube. So I took the bare minimum that I could get. I am kind of missing a phthalo green here, but they didn't have it anymore out of stock. So I took my usual favorite pigment, which is PR122, which is a very bright magenta, but a light fast one. It's also used in opera, and so sometimes people think that that pigment is not light fast, but it is. What makes opera paint not light fast is the addition of another pigment or dye or something to make it even more bright. So anyway, so PR122, then of course the Ultramarine PB29, I cannot live without that specific blue. Then I took what was closest to a phthalo blue, so phthalo blues PB15 are very transparent pigment as well, so they mixed it with some white to make it more opaque. I did expect that, so I'm not really surprised. It's really nice light blue, I quite like it. Then I took a permanent yellow, PY74, and finally the best red that I could find that was light fast, because for some reason they use a lot of pigments that are not great for the reds, at least for those that were in stock at the moment I bought them. And so I took the one also Japanesque from the Japanesque range, which is again a bit more textured. It's a combination of PR254 and PR101, both really good light fast pigments, so I'm not worried at all with them. And so at the end I'm just playing around with mixing the colors, making them more opaque or more translucent, more washed down, mixed with white and so on, just to kind of see the color range that I could get without thinking too much about it. And yeah, I'm really happy. The colors are really vibrant, and it's really nice and matte, very opaque. So overall I'm pleasantly surprised by those paints. And the thing that now I'm really curious about, because I read or heard that the Acrylic range from Holbein is better than Turner, and I really need to find a way to know which pigments are in their paints, because again, I do not buy paints without knowing. I never buy paints per color. I really buy them according to the pigments they use. So if you know, or if you have found which pigments they use, or I would just need a pigment chart of their Acrylic Holbein paints, that would be really neat. I haven't been able to find it. If you know of that, please leave a comment down below and let me know. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to share with you today. It's not gouache, it's not acrylic, it's really a mixture of those two. It's not a marketing gimmick. I was not sponsored by anyone. I paid with my own money, and I really liked them. So hope that was helpful. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and so on. That helps with the algorithm, and we all know that we have to be kind and nice to the algorithm to make this work. And yeah, thanks again, and see you in my next video. Bye!